A very warm welcome to yet another installment of Galaxy Prime right here on Galaxy Universal Network, channel 500 on Starset. My name is GUGU, and thank you so much for joining us. Do further the conversation across all our social media platforms. We are Galaxy Universal Network on Facebook. We are GAN_TV_ on Instagram and on Twitter. Today we will be joined later by CDM and some activists, student activists from the University of Free State, alongside the president of the PAC, and we'll be joined by Umama Ushalo Mbata to discuss some of the nitty-gritties of the King's burial. With that being said, let's get to our top stories. The public says a hero has fallen following the untimely death of the Zulu king, King Goodwill Zwelithini Kapegu Zulu. The king passed away last week, Friday, at the age of 72. Numerous prominent public figures visited the palace in Gwaketomthandayo, where the body of the king lies at the moment. And the king will be laid to rest at a private ceremony said to be attended by only men. And that funeral, or the burial, will take place on Wednesday evening. And the Royal House has requested that the burial should be at a private location. Let's take a look at some sentiments from them.
South Africa's Zulu king Goodwill Zwelithini died on Friday, aged 72, the royal family said in a statement. He had been admitted to a KwaZulu-Natal hospital for diabetes treatment when his health took a turn for the worse. South Africans like Noni Casimiro reacted with shock and sadness to the king's passing.
We've lost our pillar. We've lost our leader. We've lost someone who was so culturally aware, someone who was bringing all the pieces together. I feel like it's not just the loss for the Zulu nation, but the loss of culture in itself and the people in South Africa, because that's what we're all about.
South African President Cyril Ramaphosa said in a statement that His Majesty will be remembered, quote, as a much-loved, visionary monarch, and commended his contribution to cultural identity, national unity and economic development, not just in KwaZulu-Natal, but throughout the country. On the streets of Johannesburg, Lazarus Apane described it as a great loss.
Given the fact that historical magnitude of Amazulu, him leading Amazulu through difficult times, during apartheid, seeing Amazulu nation triumph to democratic dispensation.
Zwelithini's reign spanned turbulent decades in South Africa. He assumed the throne at the height of apartheid and went on to rule through the country's most violent decades, a period which included a dispute over the role of the Zulu monarchy. That spilled over into post-apartheid South Africa, when the country's new constitution recognized traditional leaders along with...
Meanwhile, the African National Congress Treasurer General Paul Mashatile, alongside the KwaZulu-Natal Premier, Mr. Sihle Zikalala, visited the Royal House to pay tribute to the king. Let's have a look at that.
Paying our condolences to the entire royal family in Ndlunkulu, the Zulu people as a whole. But as Comrade Sihle said, we convey condolences to many South Africans today on behalf of the African National Congress. King Goodwill Zwelithini is a man we worked with for many years. He was a humble man, a great king who always cared for ordinary people. Many of you would have seen him in Gauteng, visiting ordinary people in hostels, supporting cultural activities. So this is a great loss to all of us, not only the Zulu people, as I said, but to everybody in South Africa, because he was working with everybody. We are saying to the family, be consoled, be comforted. We are with you on this day, and we want to say to the King, our father, you have done your work on this earth. We bid you farewell today. Go rest now. Your work will be continued by all of us that you have taught how to care for people. So we have been in there with Comrade Sihle, not only as the chair of the ANC, but of the as the premier of KwaZulu-Natal. The government is working with the family to make sure that the king is given. And
also the former president, Jacob Zuma, also joined the mourners. And he further said that the nation has lost a stalwart. Let's take a look at that.
Boba sazile ukuthi silahlekelwe ubaba, silahlekelwe silo sethu. Sazibuza ngamunye ngamunye ukuthi sizosala sibe yini na. Noma okudaliwe kwanqunywa uNkulunkulu ungeke wabuphikisa. Kodwa sithe ngeke singakhala sizwakalise ubuhlungu benhliziyo zethu zokhala kanye nenduduzo. Siyayikhumbula indlela isilo besisiphethe ngayo sonke. Bekuyinkosi efudumele ekwenza uma unayo uzizwe uphephile, uzizwe uphelele. Esifundisa ukuthi uma umuntu ufanele ukuthi ube njani ngaso sonke isikhathi. Uma ke sithi sehlelwe ifele emnyama asisho nje ngoba sisebenzisa amagama, sisho ngoba ngempela sehlelwe ifele emnyama. Uphuke umuthi omkhulu obumthunzi wethu okuqasha uma libalele noma lina sitashe phambi kwawo sithola ukufokomala.
And the Kokta Minister, Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma, also sent a heartfelt message of condolences to the royal family. Let's have a look at that.
I think they are correct. He has revived the culture, especially those cultures that are helpful to the nation, especially when you look at how he's tried to link some of the cultural activities to health, to prevention of disease like HIV, and also in a way, when he speaks to young people, he tries to instill the values of Ubuntu, of our nation, so that when they grow up with those values. He was a big activist in terms of HIV prevention. So, and of course, he is also very forthright. He was very forthright. He spoke his mind, but I think he will be remembered as a very proud African, a very proud Zulu king who made sure that he participated in issues that affected not only more.
Moving right along with our stories, the art industry is railing from the death of two actors. The renowned Menzi Ngubane passed away on Saturday at his home in KwaZulu-Natal, and Noxolo Maqashalala's body was found. Noxolo, it is said that she apparently died a week ago, and her body was found in an apartment in Honeydew in Johannesburg. And Nambita Mpumloana paid her tribute to both the actors and defined them as very gifted and committed to their work. Mpumlwana said that he is saddened by the tragedy and would remember both the actors for their best contribution to the art industry.
Out late yesterday, early evening yesterday, and it just really ended my day. My heart stopped. I've known Menzi since we did Yizo together back in the day, and so this is a friendship that we've had for a very long time. And to know that how hard he's fought for his life for over so many years, and to lose that fight, I just never expected it. It was a blow.
And this is a blow that you worked with him throughout the many years. Of course, the most memorable is your role in Generations, working together.
With that being said, let's take a look at some famous pieces that Menzi Ngubane was performing at, or rather doing, when he was doing what he loves. Let's have a look at that. With that being said, Galaxy Prime will take a short break. Do stay tuned and further the conversation in our social media platform. We'll be back after this.
Anger boils over in El Dorado Park.
Make massive moves.
Corruption allegations have hit too close to the office of the president.
America is crying out for leadership.
I'm the president and you're fake news.
Donald Trump has already started his attacks.
It is clear from the development of the disease.
But it's still the biggest annual decline in 100 years.
Make massive moves with Starsight.
Allen past the chain.
Make massive moves.
Oh my God! Oh! Knocked out! And WBC Continental America's champion. That was delightful.
Make massive moves with Starsight. Make massive moves.
Picture perfect, you don't need no filter.
Another one.
Make massive moves with Starsight. Make massive moves.
You're the best fighter in China.
Give me the Emperor's sword, and I'll spare your life.
Shisha sector's gone too far.
Make massive moves with Starsight. Make massive moves.
Deceiver!
There isn't any time to waste then.
We can't save everyone in this war.
One moment, that's all we got.
You're locked in here with me.
Make massive moves with Starsight.
This is just the beginning.
Make massive moves.
Get out! Get out of this place!
I love you. Do you love me?
Yes.
I like this.
Someone stole from me yesterday.
It was not my fault now.
Leave me or I blast your head.
No, don't shoot, sir, please. Please don't kill us. I'll give you anything you want.
Make massive moves with Starsight. Make massive moves.
Bible is human and divine.
It's important for us to remember.
And I'm part of God's story.
Yeah, mama, mama, hey.
God is healing you.
God says what he means, and he means what he says.
God is good.
I am very grateful to God. I am healed. Amen.
Make massive moves with Starsight. Make massive moves.
Wow.
Let's go. Come on. We can be back by morning.
Who are you?
I'm the boss.
Really?
Really?
Yeah. Awesome. Totally. Yeehaw. Very funny.
Make massive moves with Starsight.
This is not your ordinary cooking show.
The show where we do all things amazing, all things African.
Over here, we educate.
Avocado seed, it lowers cholesterol, controls blood sugar and blood pressure.
We heal.
Impepho is good for your immune system as well. This here cures sugar, the blood sugar, blood pressure.
It's all about organic conversation.
So in here you've got yourself a nice vitamin C, you've got garlic, which is your natural antibiotic.
Oh wow.
I can't wait.
Great one. Be entertained. And purely African food.
And this is how you finish it up. With a slice of lemon, you just dig in and you eat and you get healthy.
Welcome to the home kitchen.
Coming soon.
Welcome back to Galaxy Prime right here on Galaxy Universal Network Channel 500. Thank you so much for joining us and to further the conversation across all our social media platforms. We are Galaxy Universal Network on Facebook. We are GAN_TV_ on Instagram and on Twitter. With that being said, let's take a look at our next story. The economic freedom fighters say it will cover the funeral costs of Mthokozisi Ntumba, who was shot and killed by the police during the students' protest at the Wits University last week. Speaking to the media, the EFF leader Julius Malema said the Ntumba may have been killed like a dog, but as the EFF, they will make sure that he gets a dignified burial. Ntumba is a father of 3 young children and a husband. He succumbed after being shot at point blank during the protest he was not part of. Let's have a look at that.
Thank you very much, comrades. Thank you very much, colleagues. The president is here. I would like for us to first be the one who poses questions. Kantla, Abongile, we can shoot the president.
SABC News. The importance in Chagas of you and the EFF coming here at this Congress.
We were here to send our condolences to the family because we feel very strong that what happened to this young man was uncalled for, and they deserve our support and the support of all South Africans. So we are here to say to the family, they are not alone. We are with them because we know that their child was not involved in any illegal activity which warranted the police to shoot at him. So we are highly disappointed by what the police have done, and we're coming to say to the family, they are not alone. We are here as the EFF, as South Africans, as members of parliament, to support them.
How are they doing? How have they received you here?
We were well received. The family obviously is going through a difficult moment because this was unexpected. They are not coping at all. But what makes matters worse is that Begitele came here and promised to help this family. But when they send them the things that they need, they are now being asked questions as to, don't you have a funeral policy? Don't you have a stokvel to contribute to your burial? Because Begitele made commitment. From there, He left and gave them a contact. Now the contact is asking them about, all types of things, which is unnecessary, because even if they had a policy, our brother has got 3 kids, the youngest being 5 months. So that man.
On some other stories, the Minister of Transport, Minister Fikile Mbalula, today launched the second leg of the Passenger Rail Agency of South Africa, known as South Africa's People's Responsibility to Protect. The Minister was joined by the PRASA Group Board. And the PRASA Group Board Chairman, Mr. Leonard Ramatlakane, alongside Mbalula, took some time to engage with the members of the media. Let's have a look at that.
The task of rebuilding those stations. So it won't cost billions to say to you, it's not a cheap exercise. So it's going to cost billions to repair. That is why in our plan we have factored in the issue that we're not going to have all this billion in 1 year. So we have to make sure that we do it in a kind of rolling action, year on year, to increase the numbers. Like we have 16 now. Corridor that is functional, but we still have to fix the wires that have been taken away. And then, of course, this year, from April, we're starting an additional 10 stations.
They are not on Twitter, they are not razzmatazz. Okay? You guys are harassing me there on Twitter with all sorts of things, but it's fine. But I then take that information, I send it to him, and then he simply press the button, send it to his security. All this information of vandalism, our people have been active. They've been sending me information, but the center doesn't hold that process. You can see some of the vandalism did not happen at night. It happened over a period of 5 days, nice and easy during the day. And then you'll be sending that information to PRASA. They don't know themselves what to do because they don't have systems.
The responsibilities, the People's Responsibility to Protect is a project that is aimed at partnering with the local residents who live near the railway lines and the security, the PRASA security and other law enforcement agencies to guard the rail tracks against any criminal activity and vandalism.
What we're doing here in Gauteng today, and then volunteer training, meaning you will then be followed by training, and then deployment and integration. You will be deployed accordingly in all the stations around Gauteng. Am I correct? And then project monitoring and evaluation and report writing. The first phase entails the rollout of public engagement program led by PRASA board. The board will engage with community stakeholders, which that has been done already, and police forums, local municipality, railway police, SAMCO, CPOs, etc. Are arrested and PRASA vandalizing property, they must not be charged with theft, they must be charged with economic sabotage. Because you are sabotaging the operation of an important service to the country and to the economy. You are shutting it down. And I've now begun to see people being charged with economic sabotage, and I've seen some of the criminal sentenced to over and above 100 years in jail. And that is good. And the service that we are going to do as volunteers, we are also going to become an intelligence, so that we get to the big fishes. You know, in Cape Town, people bury 18 trays like this, 18 carriages like this. And then, who did we not arrest? Young teenagers. And then they say they were just playing. Right in the central station in Cape Town. And then we didn't get to the big fish and all of that. So when I conclude, I want to re-emphasize the points which are very important for this, that this is not the end in itself.
On some other stories, the South African Union of Students, SASU, announced on Sunday that all the 26 universities in South Africa are in support of the national shutdown, which began today. This is after SASU met with the Deputy Minister of Higher Education, Mr. Buti Manamela, in Pretoria on Saturday to discuss the memorandum of demands. Students want all the historical debt to be abandoned, amongst other issues. And today with me in studio, I'll be joined by Chidi M, the Secretary General of the African Students Union and the SASCO activist in the Free State, Offense Ntsane, to discuss some of these issues that were presented to the Minister of Higher Education. And alongside that, some shops in Braamfontein were closed as students blocked the intersection in Jerison and De Beer Street in Johannesburg. Students in Braamfontein also made their way up to De Beer Street. Then they are calling for the street to be renamed after Mthokozisi Ntumba. Let's have a look at that. Let's take a look at the market. The rand was trading at 14 rand 90 cent and 17 rand 70 cent against the euro and 20 rand 75 cent against the British pound. With that being said, we are going to take a short break. To stay tuned. We'll be back after this.
Anger boils over in El Dorado Park.
Make massive moves.
Corruption allegations have hit too close to the office of the president.
America is crying out for leadership.
I'm the president and you're fake news.
Donald Trump has already started his attacks.
It is clear from the development of the disease.
But it's still the biggest annual decline in 100 years.
Make massive moves with Starsight. Make massive moves.
Oh my God! Oh! Knocked out! And WBC Continental America's champion. That was delightful.
Make massive moves with Starsight. Make massive moves.
Picture perfect, you don't need no filter.
Another one.
Make massive moves with Starsight. Make massive moves.
You're the best fighter in China.
Give me the Emperor's sword, and I'll spare your life.
Shisha sector's gone too far.
Make massive moves with Starsight. Make massive moves.
Deceiver!
There isn't any time to waste then.
We can't save everyone in this war.
One moment, that's all we got.
You're locked in here with me.
Make massive moves with Starside.
This is just the beginning.
Make massive moves.
Get out! Get out of this place!
I love you. Do you love me?
Yes.
I like this. Someone stole from me yesterday.
It was not my fault now.
Leave me or I blast your head.
No, don't shoot, sir, please. Please don't kill us. I'll give you anything you want.
Make massive moves with Starside. Make massive moves.
Bible is human and divine.
It's important for us to remember.
And I'm part of God's story.
Yeah, mama, mama, hey.
God is sealing you.
God says what he means, and he means what he says.
God is good.
I am very grateful to God. I am healed.
Amen.
Make massive moves with Starside. Make massive moves.
Wow!
Let's go. Come on, we can be back by morning.
Wuggy, wuggy, wuggy! Who are you?
I'm the boss.
Really?
Really, really?
Yeah! Awesome! Totally! Yeehaw!
Very funny.
Make massive moves with Starside.
This is not your ordinary cooking show.
The show where we do all things amazing.
A very warm welcome back to Galaxy Prime right here on Galaxy Universal Network, channel 500 on Starside. My name is GUGU, and thank you so much for joining us as we have seen the past couple of days that there was student protest. This time around, it has escalated to the whole country. The South African Union of Students, THUSI, has announced on Sunday that all the country's 26 universities are in support of a national shutdown, which began today. This is after SASU met with the Deputy Minister of Higher Education, Mr. Buti Manamela, in Pretoria on Saturday to discuss the memorandum of demands. Students want all the historical debt to be abandoned, amongst many other issues. And in studio, I am joined by Mr. Chidi M. And online, I am joined by the Mr. Offense Nzane, who is an activist, student activist, who is really engaging with us on that. And we also have the president of the PAC, Mr. Narias Muloto. Everyone, welcome to you, sir.
Thank you for having me on the show, and greetings to the viewers at home.
Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you so much for joining us, Mr. Nzane.
Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity.
And a very warm welcome to you, Mr. Muloto.
Thank you very much. I want to greet you and also to the viewers of the Galaxy TV.
Thank you so much. Let me start with you, Mr. Chidi M. We saw the call for students who are really protesting and saying that the government must abandon and clear off the debt that the students are owing. But going deeper to that, into detail, this is a second time around where we're seeing an issue of fees, fees becoming a problem in our country. What do you take of this?
Again, it has to lead into the current political space as a country and the current trajectory that we are taking. Clearly, the government has not heard the needs of the student following the former Fees Must Fall protests that happened, that were led by Mcebo Dlamini and the likes a few years back. Yes. The government has failed in its setting up a plan following Jacob Zuma's declaring of free education. Yes. The introduction of the new administration of Ramaphosa has clearly failed in setting up any plan to ensure that students' demands or students' needs are met. And in fact, I think this was just a kettle waiting to boil. We all knew it was eventually coming because there were no plans in place to ensure that free education, or at least access to education, was increased, was spread out, and black students, majority of black students, were given a chance to enter the higher education space. So We are just seeing now what happens when ineffectiveness and inefficiency take root in a government administration, particularly in higher education.
I like that comment. Mr. Moloto, let me come to you. As the PAC, you've been the champions throughout history of developing and improving young people's life. What do you take of this episode, or this installment, or this pattern rather, of the fees must fall, or fees crisis in our country?
Look, we're very disappointed, deeply concerned and disappointed as the PAC that the government has failed to learn from the previous protest on this issue. The question of student funding and education is a national issue, and it is of course not supposed to be carried out by the students themselves. I mean, these are the students not in a position to fund education. Now, it is the responsibility of the nation and the country to fund education. We invest into the future. The best way of investing into the future of the country, into the economy and the new social system and order, is to have educated young people. And that you can do it nowhere other than funding education through the students. Now, for having had this question hanging there, having the policies, people going to campaign for votes, promising that there will be free education, and impose on the poor students and learners who did not have an opportunity to have any earning, sort of an earning, to punish them in the environment of learning is a crime. It's a serious crime, to say really less.
Now, Mr. Moloto, it was so surprising that the universities announced that they won't be, registering students who are previously in debt. And then all of a sudden, the Minister of Higher Education is announcing that there would be an additional funding. There seems to be some inconsistency and some dishonesty in this matter. As the PAC, what's your stance with that regard?
Look, you can't play around with the education of the young people, our youth, and the learners. And this shows the lack of clarity, the dishonesty, as you said, which is totally unacceptable. I mean, it's a national question. It's not even a question of a government. It's a question of the nation, the position of everybody involved. Now, and we know that there's money, and in the government, we know that money is being prioritized and used for other purposes other than education. You see, the first task after any country became liberated is to educate itself, to re-educate itself as the nation and learn as the young people. How do you hope to have the future secured when we do not ensure that our young people, students and education is being given to free people? That means we are buying, the young people are being exposed to an environment where they are supposed to buy education, to be educated. If you are poor and you are talented, you may not be having an opportunity to access education. That is wrong, totally unacceptable, and it must be denounced because it deserves to be denounced.
Thank you, Mr. Moloto. Let me come to you, Mr. Offense Nsane. We've been seeing from last week that in the University of Free State, there has been some elements of violence where police have been using rubber bullets and stun grenades to disperse students who are protesting against the fees must fall. How are things in the Free State at the current moment?
Thank you for the opportunity again. As things stand, the situation is very, very tense. There's an altercation between students and the police. And on that note, I have to say that students are very frustrated about how law enforcement is handling this matter, because there's reports of sexual harassments from female students, students being shot with rubber bullets. The way law enforcement is handling this matter, students are not happy at all. Emotions are high. As I'm speaking to you right now, the campus is on full shutdown. No one is allowed to enter. the campus until all our demands are met. So it's a very, very tense atmosphere for students at the moment.
Now, taking a look at what transpired last week when we heard the Minister of Higher Education announcing that there will be additional funding that will be released for students. As a student, how do you receive this?
It's very, very frustrating because if you are using or a recipient of NSFAS, by virtue of you being using NSFAS, it means that you come from an underprivileged background. You cannot afford to pay for your own fees.
Yes.
You cannot afford to pay registration, residence, or get allowance. So by hearing that funding will be cut, it's very, very devastating because education is the key to success. And the only way we can be truly liberated is by access to education. And if by the Minister of Education releasing a statement stating that no additional funding would be given to students, that is mere gatekeeping of education. So we will not stand for that. Our demands are clear. We want all prior historic debt wiped and more funding allocated to education and higher institutions of learning because we want education. Students are clear on that stance. Students want to study. Students want access to institutions. So that statement by the minister wasn't received well by students.
Now, let me come to you, Chidiem. Thank you so much, Mr. Nzane, for those views. Mr. Chidiem, last week we saw something that turned out as a blame game because the Minister of Higher Education, Minister Nzimande, came out saying that this policy of free education was announced by the former president, which is in this case, former President Jacob Zuma. What do you take of this? I mean, isn't it that the most important thing is education being delivered other than blaming who introduced the policy or who did not introduce the policy?
Well, I think what we need to understand is that we have the politics of populism and then you have the politics of executive management. Now, the president, as the executive head of the country, the former President Jacob Zuma, listened to the students and took a directive and implemented the policies and resolutions of the ANC in implementing free education. Then we had a new administration, neoliberalist government that comes in power. You have ministers that would do anything, in particular politically prostitute themselves to ensure that their positions are safe. We've seen that with Fikile Mbalula, and this is what you're seeing with Blade Nzimande. It's simple political prostitution. But the main issue here that we need to talk about is free education and the funding model for it. When we talk about free education isn't some sort of, isn't a sort of a pool where money simply goes in and doesn't come out. As South Africa, we're a developing state. We need to understand that we come from 500 years of subjugation, of black people being deprived of resources, of perpetual slavery. The only tool as black people that we do have at our current disposal is education. Education does play a role of the liberator. Now, as a state, the state as an agency for development needs to ensure that education, particularly for the black majority, for poor black people, is accessible to all people. Now, the state now complains of this idea that there's no funding model for education, which is very ludicrous to even think about. Funding free higher education is not as costly as it is for funding IPPs and giving tenders and other corrupt deals to white monopoly capital and the president's allies. It costs to create a free education funding.
Well, what's the cost of creating a free education?
It costs between 50 and 70 billion rand.
And in your own view, what do you think could be eliminated and put in? What could be a strategy to make sure that funding for education is there?
Well, firstly, I think it all boils down to when we speak of radically transforming the economy, that's what we mean. The state firstly needs to nationalize the Reserve Bank. The state should fund education. It shouldn't be a matter of where the money comes from. The state itself should create money to fund education. We should have a cap. If you earn, currently the NSFAS cap, which was published in 2018, the income of 350,000 is a full bursary scheme. It should be adjusted for inflation on a sliding scale. In 2021-2020 financial year, that scale should have been at 400,000 rand. Because inflation has increased. Then for people who earn above 400,000 rand to about 900,000 rand, you have a basic loan model which the state will guarantee. The same way that the previous NSFAS bursary model worked. Because again, we must ensure that there must be some sort of payment mechanism for those who can pay. But those who can't pay for education, they must receive free education. And then that's how it goes on. It's a very simple strategy. The problem is that the state wants to, there is a concerned effort by those in business to ensure that only limited amount of black people enter the economy. Because that's how our economy is structured. Remember, we've got one economy, which is a white economy, and then we are just labor reserves. So the white economy needs a certain amount of black people every year, which is why they are vested in ensuring that free education does not succeed. They are vested in ensuring that school students, school students in universities are seen as being reckless, are seen as being violent, are seen as being savages, unacademic people. The cause of fees must fall is one that is but a microcosm of a greater battle for black emancipation.
Let me go to Mr. Muloto. Thank you. Let's hold that thought, Mr. Chidiem. Mr. Muloto, as the PAC, in your policy, what are some of the policies you've put in place to ensure that education is accessible in our country?
Look, the founding president of the PAC, Robert Mangaliso Sobukwe, defining the policy of PAC on education is education to us means a service to the nation. Now, when you educate your young people, you are preparing to serve your people going into the future. And there's no nation that can do anything without education, particularly education that is orientated to build a new nation, or a nation that is proud of itself. Now, having said so, education cannot be limited to or be accessible to the highest bidders. Only people that can. And looking into the South African society, almost the whole majority of people are poor, and they've been made poor systematically over a period of time. Now, literally being taken, that means majority of the African students or learners will not be able to access university. Now, it is the function of the government. It is the function, the duty. The government has a duty to educate the young people and the students. That responsibility cannot shun away from. Now, that is our position as the PAC, and we stood by that for a period of time. We have never shaken. Now, it is a question of how do you allocate your funds, where your priorities are. And this government has been exposed for putting education at the lower ladder of its own priorities. Now, the fact that we cannot even learn, they hope that people will be simple. It's the same problem. This problem we've been sitting with as a country and as a nation over a period of time. They thought that people will simply forget. But the problem in the system is a problem of a policy that is not favoring what you call education itself. Now, that is basically where our problem is. And we are saying it is wrong. And these learners, we must also emphasize that a right to learn is a constitutional right, similar to a protest. The student and the learners have a right enshrined in the Constitution to protest against this selling of education to the highest bidders, to the poor people. For instance, how do you expect that these learners will be able to afford to pay the education themselves? It's their parents. Basically, these learners are doing something that is supposed to be carried out by their parents because they are not in a position to pay. And their parents are in a position to pay. Where are their parents? They are there at work, still not able to afford. So it's a crisis that is in the system, in the educational system, that is in our country, that is in our policies. Now, that is the position of the PAC.
Thank you, Mr. Muloto, for those strong sentiments with regards to education. Let me come to you, Mr. Ntsane, lastly. As we are seeing this protest going on, what's the next move with regards to SASCO and as students? What's your next move with regards to these protests? Has the university come, to receive your demands, and what was the response?
Our next move is we hold the ground. We continue to be resolute. What we ask now is solidarity from the community to understand our cries and demands, that we are members of the community, and what affects us, the fees, the financial exclusion, the academic exclusion, are the same problems which affect the community. So we continue to close the campus until all our demands are met. So we are really not happy about how the management and university and from national level, how they are responding to this. The question which was posed on how the money for funding education should come from, priorities need to be made. There are a lot of financial cut down that can be made in the country in order to fund free education. Free education as things stand is just a fallacy. It is a word. It's not a reality. Education is not free. Education is very, very expensive. There are various factors and forms by which a Black student still needs to pay or is excluded if they don't have the financial resources. So the education we are receiving now is not free. So we are still fighting for free education, really free education. So our stance is still like that. Our stance won't change, and we will not be shaken by anything. We will not move or change the mandate for anyone. So all we are asking for is solidarity, and people pledging their support.
Thank you, Mr. Ntsane. As we are closing with our last remarks, Chidi, what's your message to every student that's in the streets right now, really pushing and convocating for the free education? As we may know that this has been one of the 21st century struggles. Education has been one of them. What's your stance on that?
It's a very simple stance, and fundamentally, and I think holistically, what we need to create an awareness is that no government, no matter how effective the mechanisms of oppression may be, can quench the fire of the youth revolution. Not even the apartheid government can do that. The Chinese government failed to do that. That's why the Chinese government implemented economic reforms. Currently, the Chinese government had to step in the Hong Kong revolution because it was led by students. No government, no matter how effective its tools of oppression may be, can quell the flames of the student revolution. The youth must stand up. The youth must take up its own stance and ensure that this country is not led astray, is not led into a period where we'll go back to a period of neo-colonialism, a period where we'll be ruled indirectly by our colonial oppressors. We should be resolute on this demand. Free education is not a call that is based on a few Black people getting degrees and getting jobs. It has the potential to spark change holistically across Black people, the entire Black society. Education remains one of the most pivotal points in emancipating Black people, and it's very important that we ensure that the struggle continues and we do not allow the struggle to be captured by foreign forces or by political parties for their own populist and petty gains. It is important that students unite behind this call and ensure that we do not die down, we do not back down. We stand firm and resolute. The call for free higher education is feasible, it is possible, and it is possibly, if we are resolute enough, we can have it implemented in our lifetime. The cause for free education is in line with the cause for economic freedom.
Wow. Thank you, Mr. Chidi. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining me. I truly appreciate the time that you have afforded us. I had Mr. Offense Ntsane, who is a student activist, and the president of the PAC, Mr. Nereus Muloto, really engaging with us about the issue of free education, free higher education in our country. And the gentlemen have shared very strong views with that regards. And unfortunately, this is where our installment for Galaxy Prime will come to an end. Thank you so much. Do join us again tomorrow as we unfold more news across South Africa, Africa, and the rest of the world. From me and my team, good night.
Thanks for the opportunity.